Welcome into today's video. One thing I've discovered in my recovery is that addiction is the opposite of connection. So a lot of questions I ask myself sort of go back to how modern technology enables us to connect in such a wider variety of ways. We can instant message, we can text, we can email, we can still call on the phone, we can FaceTime. There's just so many different options. We can go on social media and interact with posts, like, comment. We can go on YouTube, comment on the videos, like the videos. There's just so many different layers to connection. I began to question how all of this newer technology was starting to feel like it was interfering with my relationships. Have you ever been in a room with your family and noticed that your nieces or your nephew was more comfortable to play video games than play with his cousins, or they're all on their devices together interacting online versus just hanging out in person? I've definitely seen that in our family. It can look like trying to connect with a colleague or a friend or a parent, and while you're talking, they just start going on their device and scrolling Facebook, or maybe they're checking their email, or maybe they're checking their Instagram. Whatever it is, you just feel a little less important and a little dismissed in those moments, or at least I do. And these are the sort of scenarios that made me start questioning, how much are we allowing these to invade our personal lives to the point where they're becoming detrimental? A lot of what I'm discussing today came from this book I read by Cal Newport. So if you want to go more into this subject, I highly recommend that book. I'm just covering like the base level of the focal points that I found the most sort of thought-provoking and interesting. So because I was in my addiction in the Y2K era, when I came out of my addiction, naturally in my addiction, I didn't embrace technology for obvious reasons. I needed to be like under the radar and have little to no contact with ways to trace the activities that I was doing because I was wrapped up in all things criminal and illegal. But as I sobered up, I was sort of thrust into this modern world, and I felt very outdated very quickly. Like, what is going on? There's so much. Like, I immediately started trying to understand, what can I do with the internet? The internet is so powerful. I wanted to embrace it, but I felt overwhelmed by it. And then over the years, I've taken more interest in the internet, the power of the modern day ways in which we can connect and communicate, but also I've been a little apprehensive, like how is all this going to affect us in the long term? But the book brings a lot of this into the conversation. So definitely not anti-internet, but I'm getting to be more of what Cal calls a digital minimalist. And so I want to touch on this, and I want to ask that if you've never once considered minimalism, consider the fact that anybody can be a digital minimalist and benefit from the strategies digital minimalists have come to uncover and use. You don't have to be like a true minimalist to benefit from these. So I want to share some of that. So over the years, as I've started a business online, I've come to really appreciate the power of the internet, and I'm definitely not anti-technology. I would say I'm tech challenged, but I am really quick to embrace new technology. I find it very exciting, but I'm also starting to sort of be a little bit more aware and intentional about how I'm letting the technology and the modern communication come into my life. And so I found this book very powerful because he expanded on this and brought so much more awareness to it. I had been running my own experiments, doing things like social media detoxes, going all the way off certain platforms. And so I sort of began the journey, and this is just expanding on it. So the way humans have interacted successfully over the years, over the decades, centuries, for even an entire millennia, has been face-to-face conversations, storytelling, in-person connections that are able to be deep and meaningful And that has been very quickly disrupted by modern technology. Again, doing things like FaceTime, that's actually really great for if you have somebody in another country that you're trying to keep in contact with. So these tools are not bad, and that's what he points out. The technology itself isn't inherently bad or good. What allows it to affect us in a negative way, like mentally feeling sort of like, oh, I'm using these apps too much, I know this isn't healthy, or maybe just to be sort of numb and detached more and more as you use it more and more, but not even to be aware of it, or to just be losing large amounts of your time that you're really not acknowledging that your time is so valuable. What you put your attention and focus on is so powerful for your personal growth, development, for the relationships in your life and the people that you love to feel loved and to feel more connected to you. So when we have technologies that are sort of running us or using us, that's when it becomes bad. But when we decide how we're going to use them and we think of them like tools, that's when we become more empowered. And that's this sort of concept of digital minimalism that I've come to really love and start embracing in my own ways. I've been running my own experiments and I've been finding a lot of things really interesting. Did you know that on your device, it can tell you how much you're spending? At least my iPad does this, and I think most phones do it. If you go into settings, here, I'll show you on mine, then you click here, and this is where it pulls up all of your data for how much you use, and it does this every single day without you even telling it to. Mine does, and I think a lot of other devices do too. That can already bring a lot of awareness to, like, for me, how much time do I actually need to spend on Poshmark, which is where one of my online shops is, the other one's on eBay. But I'm noticing I get about the same amount of revenue from both sites. I spend far less time on eBay than Poshmark. So things like this are good to uncover. And then how much time am I really spending on YouTube? Because, well, I can create videos and get a lot of value out of that and feel very fulfilled when I'm making videos. To consume videos, I've had to put a cap on that. And I really try to keep myself to 1.5 hours per week. But this, just recording it, can really very quickly tell me, am I on track for that goal or am I off track? Because there was a time when I consumed anything and everything, there was no rhyme or reason, and I was losing large amounts of my working hours without even really realizing where they were going, because a 5-minute break was a 15-minute break with an Instagram post, with scrolling, with liking, with commenting. The time can very quickly escape, and I wasn't being very methodical or intentional with how I was using these services before. So that was a really powerful thing, is to just start paying attention to how much I'm on each app, and is that in line with what I value and prioritize? Is it in line with my goals? So that was a big step for me. I guess the point is, if we were able to communicate like that and are still able to communicate like that, we should challenge and question the new modern technologies that are sort of disrupting that way. So there's no shortage of scientists and researchers who are studying the subject and bringing back really compelling information to question some of these habits, to question whether or not when I'm hanging out with my family, do I want to keep my notifications on, or do I just want to turn them off? Because doing small things like that can just improve the overall quality of the visit. They know when I go there, I'm in person. I'm there to connect. I'm not there to check on my Poshmark. I'm not there to check on my eBay. I'm not there to check every text message from everybody coming in. I'm not there to check my emails. I'm there to be with them in that short amount of time that we have. But if I'm there to connect with them and they're not making the same effort to connect with me, the quality of the communication is being undermined. And that's what the scientists and researchers are uncovering, is that the quality of our communication is being undermined when we allow the communication to constantly distract us. There's like this layer of constant humming distraction in the background at all times. The iPhone, that was the first device that really allowed you to have like this tiny computer on you at all times. The average adult checks their phone 80 times a day. Well, that may seem shocking a year. Some of you that may seem like a small number. Some of you that may seem like a huge number. But the point is, every time, say I'm trying to work on writing part of my book, every time I get a notification or on my browser, my computer, I decide to click on this and go to something else, it takes 20 minutes to get back into that same level of deep work. So if I'm constantly being interrupted, that's really, really undermining my ability to do large chunks of deep work. And this is the name of Cal's other book, which I think was one of the very first books I read on the subject. So I guess you could say I'm a huge fan of his work. So certain companies were very innovative and very ahead of the curve as far as something called the attention economy. That may be a term you're already familiar with. You've already heard it a bajillion times, or maybe you've not heard it or not really been curious of what that means. So the attention economy is a business model where a large chunk or the entire chunk of the business is focused on gaining the customer's attention, gaining the customer's time. That time and attention is the commodity the business is after. They can package that up neatly in the form of personal data and then sell the customer essentially to advertisers. So Google search, well, Google itself is in the attention economy. Facebook is in the attention economy. Apple is in the attention economy. Apple, of course, has products too. But Facebook, most all of their services are free to use. Some are paid, sure. But when you think about it, the more time you spend on Facebook, the more attention you give to Facebook, the more you're on their app, the more valuable they become, the more money they can make selling all of your information over to advertisers. And they can do this again and again and again. It's sort of the concept of reselling the customers. Well, I'm personally no longer on Facebook. I do admire the way they were able to be so ahead of their time in a way, or be really innovative and be very strategic with how they built their business. Although I personally just don't want to be one of their customers they're reselling over and over again. That's a personal choice. Here's what he illustrates in the book. Your time equals their money. The day that I'm making this video, Facebook is currently valued at $1.18 trillion. Google is currently valued at $2.132 trillion. Google is the fourth biggest company in the world as of now. And another one, Apple. Apple is currently valued at $2.909 trillion. It's massive. It's a conglomerate. It's humongous. So, like he pointed out in the book, these numbers represent the large amount of people that are so freely giving over their attention and time to these services, these devices, so much so that represents all the time that these companies have, all the eyeballs they have on them. Another reason, knowing how huge Facebook is, and in this example that Cal points out, is they have that much money in their budget to design the app to make it as humanly addictive as possible. A lot of their strategy goes into exploiting our psychological weaknesses, exploiting our vulnerabilities. It's not by accident that it's so addictive. That's by design. So knowing that, I can sort of treat it like, okay, me going in to spend zero money, them having all that money to design it as efficient as possible to capture my attention and to keep me on there. What are the odds that I'm going to be able to use that in a moderate way? Every day, it's like I'm going into a casino hoping that I'm like the jackpot winner, but knowing that the casino, more often than not, is going to win. So reframing it that way made it all the easier for me to stay off of apps like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. But for me, the risk isn't worth it, knowing that my long-term goals and like the meaning I'm after, it doesn't align with that. So it was easy for me to let it go. It wasn't easy initially, but it's easier the longer I'm off of it. What I've come to understand as somebody who's been revived 3 times, so 3 different times where I would have died had I not been resuscitated by the paramedics. So I've come to understand that the time I do have here is precious, it's valuable, and how I spend it is so important. And I just want to emphasize that for anybody who maybe isn't thinking of how valuable your time is here. It really is limited, and my own mortality and the mortality of the people I love isn't something I can ignore. So I don't take it lightly, and I hope that this can help a few people just to think a little bit more about, is what I'm doing online a good use of my time? Or am I doing it too much? Could I dial it back? Could I streamline it? Could I extract all the benefits in a much more smaller chunk of time? A great example is a lot of people don't want to let certain apps go, and one of them is Facebook, because that's how you keep in contact with your relatives, and you don't want to be like out of the loop. And the fact that it's always updating when you're off there for large chunks of time, it's natural to feel like you're missing out, like you're, oh, I'm rude if I'm not on there liking my friend or my cousin's post. It'll be like I'm ignoring them. Just all these thoughts may be holding you back from getting off there, but you don't have to leave if you don't want to. You could just set a limit, like try something like, the example in the book was, step away from whatever platform, step away for 30 days. He calls it a digital declutter. A digital declutter is just taking 30 days or longer away from any apps or technologies that aren't essential to your livelihood. It wouldn't cause harm to your most important relationships, or it wouldn't cost you consequences with your work. And in this 30 days, you will feel really uncomfortable, and you will feel like you're ignoring people, and you will feel out of the loop, and it will be hard, and that's the point. A lot of growth happens in the uncomfortable bits. You'll be able to uncover in this 30 days what you miss the most and what you actually feel more lighter or free not putting back into your life. So I was able to eliminate TikTok, Instagram, Facebook right off the bat by just measuring, what do they give me versus what do they take from me. So they all took way too much of my time and attention to give me the very little benefits to my personal social life, or like social life, digital social life, sort of simulated social life, versus the small amount of business benefits I got, like free business exposure. So I eliminated all of them, and I put my attention on YouTube, which I feel like gives me the most value, and it was the one that I missed most when I was on my break from social media. I went on mine before I knew of the digital detox, but mine was just, I think I called it a social media detox or something. I just went cold turkey off all of them, and I've talked about that, so I'm not going to get back into that here because I have a lot more I want to discuss. But say I didn't want to give up Facebook. An example could be just to tell myself, when I introduce it back, I go on for 30 minutes a week. I catch up with everybody that I want to catch up with, that is like a top priority for me, and then everything else, I just let it go. So for me, going on YouTube 1.5 hours a week, that felt very doable, and that felt like something that I could hit and not feel like I was overdoing it. I could still get inspired by other creators, inspired by other types of like video creation, and also learn a lot, like DIYs and tutorials, but not feel like I'm over consuming and not doing enough to work on myself, my business, my relationships. So I also kept Pinterest, because Pinterest was where I like to gather and collect my creative ideas. And the book is bringing to my attention that I probably could have kept some of the others if I really wanted to, by using their services, like isolating the services that give me the most value, then making a plan for how am I going to use just these services. I thought it was very eye-opening to learn. It was essentially what he pointed out in his book was, think of it like this. if I like, comment, retweet, whatever, just text message, all of these are considered shallow communications. Even leaving comments on YouTube and text messaging are considered shallow communications. Sending likes, hearts, emojis. So if I would do that 100 times to one person versus call them and have a conversation about what's going on, that conversation would be more powerful than those 100 other shallow interactions. And I thought that was so empowering to learn, because it helped me to feel like, no, I don't need to like every comment. And even on this channel, I don't have to like every comment. I don't have to comment back to everything, because if I don't do that, that frees up my time to actually talk to you in the videos more and to get more of my message across this way, which is more meaningful than just liking, hearting, which does virtually nothing. Stepping away from the networks also and taking that 30 days to yourself can really bring a lot of clarity. I found clarity in who's reaching out to you, who even notices that you're not on Facebook anymore, who notices that you've left Instagram. Did anybody notice I left TikTok? So the people that do notice, that's powerful information to have, because you're like, okay, so these are like my people. And of course, it's your choice if those are the people that you want to prioritize, but the fact that they're prioritizing you says a lot. And there may be relationships that you sort of let go that you realize during that declutter, I wish I was closer to so-and-so, but I just didn't really notice how disconnected we'd become, because almost all our interaction was via text messaging, or we sort of lost contact altogether for large amounts of time. So that can be a huge benefit to going off any of the apps for 30 days. Something that I found I was asking myself was, is this in line with my actual, what I believe is my higher purpose? So is this getting me more in tune with my higher purpose or long-term goals as far as my business? Or is it getting in the way of me being able to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, or what I feel I'm meant to accomplish with the little time I do have left here? Tomorrow's not promised. Do I want to really give YouTube 4 hours of my time today, knowing that my time could have been better spent connecting with my husband, doing something with my son? Those memories will stay with them forever, but the time I spend on YouTube, as soon as it's spent, it's spent. Nobody's going to know I watched that video. Nobody's and something he brings up in the book that I thought was a good way to think about it is, okay, so if I'm not commenting or interacting with all these posts on Instagram, Facebook, etc., when I die, oh no, I think that was brought about by the book I'm reading now, this one. So a way to prioritize your long-term goals, this is sort of related to business, but are these people going to show up to my funeral? And more often than not, the answer is no, which can make things a whole lot easier in your day-to-day. You're like, no, I want to focus on what matters. I want to focus on meaning. I want to focus on quality over quantity. And these are all things that I uncovered for myself. So I just want to put out there the strategies that I've used that I've found very beneficial. Strategies that I use are I check my Poshmark, I check my business notifications before I go into a family visit. I turn my notifications off during large chunks of my day, so like text messages, any notifications are just turned to silent. I keep my ringtone volume up. So, but then there are chunks of my day where I turn everything to silent, and that's usually in the evening when my husband and son are here, so I know that like ultimately whatever it is, it can wait a few hours. But with my parents getting older, with both of our parents getting older, it may be most important to start allowing like, okay, only my mom and dad, his mom and dad's phone calls can come through during this time because in case of an emergency. So, but as of now, I just keep it really simple. Another strategy, deleting certain apps like off of my phone. So when I was on my social media detox, I never put them back on my phone, but they come as the default, like Facebook. I deleted them off my phone or deactivated them so that I couldn't access them on my phone. That was a huge move in the right direction for me when I was still considering using the services. And then having something that I can focus on when I'm not on the devices. That was like the final point in the book that I wanted to bring across, was having a physical hobby and something that's active, physical, active, challenging. That can be like a really, really great resource to offset all of this digital, all of this time we spend on our devices. So for me, it naturally came in the form of doing things that I was really passionate about as a kid. So I got more into art. I prioritized working out more because I felt good afterwards, and I started to realize it's just really important, if I'm the only one in my business, that I work out and keep myself as healthy as I can, because if I'm not, then I'm the only employee essentially. Hopefully that's not always the case, but that's my current scenario. Even making videos takes a lot of effort, because for a lot of videos I'm going around and I'm filming other areas and other things to bring into the video. B-roll is what it's called. And so that's an active thing because I'm not actually online while I'm creating the video. It's very expressive. So sewing, upcycling, all these sort of things help offset the amount of time writing, and that has really been so crucial because I don't feel like I'm missing out on something if I have something else that I'm really passionate about and that I feel like is more in line with who I am as a person, and kind of creating that sort of like what makes your soul happy. So art makes my soul happy. So making sure I make the time to do that every day was a really positive turning point for me. Whereas before it was really easy to write it off like, well, it's not that important, or a workout, well, I need to get my work done first. But making the mental shift of like, no, this is just important, if not more important. So make the time for it. Set it into the schedule. It's part of my schedule. It's part of my system now. Going back with more intention and what I use and how I use it, that's been the biggest benefit to learning about all of this. And I hope that somebody out there watches this and also starts to uncover these things for yourself, so that you're able to bring more meaningful connection in your life. Because again, addiction is the opposite of connection, and connection can really bring so much healing to us. It can bring us so much into such a better mental headspace. It's just a really, really simple thing we can do to better ourselves and to better our relationships. So thank you for watching, especially if you watched till the end. I really, truly appreciate you, and I'll be back hopefully sooner than later.